Hi, I'm Zach, making another video about my new obsession, the Malazan Book of the Fallen, talking about Gardens of the Moon again. The more I think about this book, the more obsessed with it I become. Today we're going to talk about my favorite dynamic in this entire book. Of course, it's a fantasy, so you get a lot of different characters kind of pairing up throughout many different quests and storylines and narratives. It's a really cool narrative system. The prose is amazing. Erickson's awesome. Um, I'm maybe 200 pages into Dead House Gates right now, and I really like it. I can't wait to continue the series, but there's still more I have to say about Gardens of the Moon. And the best dynamic within it is the dynamic that's found between Tool and Lorn. Lorn being possibly my favorite character in all of fantasy at this point. I love Lorn so much. I can't stop talking about her. I think one of the most interesting things about this book is the dynamic, the friendship, the bond, the relationship between Tool and Lorn. I've talked about Tool's offer to Lorn to rid herself of Empire and blood and join him on a separate kind of quest, one that was more fruitful, more peaceful. I've talked about that offer as if it was like the final offer for Lorn, and it was Lorn's final defeat, like freeing the Jaghut tyrant Raced, along with refusing to either accept or decline Tool's offer, sealed her fate for her death at the end of this book. I always thought that was a very interesting part. And most of the conversations that they have, I think, are brilliant. We're going to be looking at the wiki for Malazan, and I'm going to be very careful not to get any spoilers. And I know I'm playing with fire right now, and a spoiler could just leap out at me, but this is how I want to do the study, because I think that this relationship deserves a lot of time and a lot of thought. So let's try to do that as best that we can. I'm going to skip this entire thing. The only thing I'm going to read of this wiki is Gardens of the Moon. I don't even want to know how many books he appears in. I don't want to know what happens to Tool. The purposes of this study is to look over Gardens of the Moon and try to see what we can analyze, what we can explore, and what we can study. In Gardens of the Moon, Onos Tulan was first encountered on the Revi Plain when he burst from the ground during an attack by Ilgris Barghast on the party of Adjunct Lorn and killed one of the attackers by impaling him on his sword. Although, with the help of Tak the Younger, Onos had saved the adjunct's life, Lorn was angry with him. The Talani Moss was an integral part of Lorn's mission in the area, was supposed to have made contact with her days earlier, and the Barghast had likely been in the area in response to his presence. After having introduced himself, Onos contemplated the barrow nearby whilst Tak administered first aid to the adjunct's injured arm. Onos told Lorn that the barrow had yielded truth and that they were on the right path. Lorn explained to Tak that Onos would make his own way to Pale. First of all, my mind was blown by Lorn's Atatarl blade. I think it's the coolest sword I've ever read about. I want an anti-magic sword. I love that she's a bane to magic. It's like the coolest fucking thing you can be is Adjunct Lorn. But I remember him coming out from like the earth, from the ground, this undead, monstrous warrior. And the way that Erickson described his skin and his physicality to me was like shocking, electrifying, and super compelling. A really gothic addition. And like that's partly one of the reasons I'm so mesmerized by the relationship between Tool and the adjunct Lorn is because just like in my head, in my imagination, just the image of the two of them together, it's such a gothic pairing. You know, it's such a morbid kind of pair that I find like hypnotizing. I love these two together, and I think that they both have like an equal amount of darkness to them, right? And they're both ruled by compulsion, by possession, really. Possession for Lorn. She's possessed by the state, by the Empress Lysine. She doesn't even know that, you know, when she's crying, she doesn't know whose tears they are, Lysine's or her own. She's possessed by the state and compelled to act as Lysine's hand, whereas Tool is compelled to work with the Empire, work with Lorn, due to a spell that's come over him, right? A compulsion. They are both two figures who don't have autonomy at all whatsoever. I think part of the like hidden philosophical or psychological truth of Gardens of the Moon that makes it so tragic and complicated to grapple with is that the gods interfere with us so much. Empire interferes with us so much, and empire is kind of the postmodern substitute for divinity. That we have so much political or spiritual interference that we're not really autonomous anyway. Like we don't really control our own destinies anyway. But Gardens of the Moon is beautiful because it kind of navigates all the different ways that people try or delude themselves into thinking that they're the makers and shapers of their own destiny. It kind of navigates all the different ways that people try, some succeed and some fail, to find a semblance of personal freedom in this kind of really dark and intense world of Malazan, which we can totally superimpose over our own understanding of our own actual real world. But people like Tool and Lorn, they hit me so much more because they're slightly more enlightened than most, in my opinion. Like they know that they don't have any control and they know like they both are destined to have kind of terrible ends. You know, Tool already met his. Lorn knows she's going to die doing something that isn't even within her true character, and she doesn't even know her true character. Lorn is such a beautiful and tragic character. I love the two of them together. So that's how we're going to do this. We're going to read what's going on with him in Gardens of the Moon. I'm going to pop in with some thoughts, some insight, some commentary here and there, and hopefully by the end we'll have a pretty good exploration of their relationship. When Onos rejoined the adjunct in Pale, she called him Tool, a name he said he would accept given that it was suitable to his situation of a new beginning. And the adjunct is certainly projecting at that time. You know, they're both tools of Empire. Lorn is like the most obvious tool of Empire. She's a tool who is desperately trying to hold on to her humanity. Her ultimate gambit is that she's trying to groom Paran into becoming her replacement. Her ultimate gambit is to somehow do the devious, despicable, authoritarian actions of the state and yet somehow keep her soul intact, which she ultimately fails to do. She's a tool. They're both tools. They're both instruments of the state. He then told Lorn more about the history of his people than she knew to be in the Empire annals. Amongst other things, he told her that he was the only one of his clan to have survived the 28th Jaghut War and the only one unbound to Logros. She supposed that it might be because of this that he was more loquacious than the other Imas she had met. Upon questioning, that's right, like she's like, why is this one so talkative? Why is this undead ancient soldier so talkative to me? And I think one of the reasons, well, like Tool is a unique character, but I think that Tool, he represents death, right? And of course it's really talkative to Lorn. She's on death's door. She's about to die. She hardly even realizes it. She's about to die. So death is a lot more conversational, right? Because Lorn gets to understand death or build a relationship with that which symbolizes death very soon before she actually experiences it herself, right? Like Lorn, this thing with Lorn and Tool, I think, is just so cool on multiple different fronts. There's like multitudes to this dynamic, to this relationship, and I really appreciate it. Which ultimately makes one of the most tragic parts of this whole book is Lorn's refusal to commit to Tool's offer of, let's both get out of here. Right, because his compulsion, like from releasing the Jaghut tyrant, like is broken. So he was like, I can take you away with me, free of Empire, free of Lysine, which is basically paradise, right? But she can't commit to that, and by being non-committal, she refuses. And that's kind of the biggest tragedy of this. Like, he's so talkative that one of the most important things he says to her is a request for furthering this relationship, for a partnership. Ultimately, it's tragically ignored by Lorn. Although we know that she's deeply, deeply thinking about it, like her getaway. But God, this book is so fascinating. I wasn't joking in the last video. I might never be done talking about this book. Tool also confirmed that he had indeed met the Emperor but that he was unable to tell her about the first throne due to a binding imposed on all Logros Talani Mas, as well as Kron Talani Mas, after the emperor's death. Yeah, like he symbolizes not only death, but death of empire, or like symbolizes the like cannibalistic nature of empire itself. This thing that has consumed Lorn's entire life, and that Lorn has dedicated her entire life to. Like she sees it symbolized gothically within this undead, decaying soldier, and through him, she sees the futility of empires, empresses, and emperors, of adjuncts even. Onos had joined the adjunct to release a Jaghut tyrant from his barrow in the Gadrobi Hills into Rujistan. As they journeyed there, he created a barrier around them for protection. At one point, they witnessed a massive conflagration in the distance, which Tool stated to be within that barrier, and which involved the opening of a multitude of warrens, amongst which he recognized elder warrens. I love all this shit, dude. I still don't have like an expert understanding of the magic systems of the warrens, or even of the true history of the Talani Mas. But I'm just eating it up. I am devouring it completely. I can't wait to learn more and get a true, firm understanding on the mechanics of Malazan and the magic involved, and of all the different kinds of creatures and people and characters and themes too. But the Talani Mas, I think, will hold a special place in my heart because of this dynamic. Tool, I think, is really interesting. I think that the Talani Mas is fascinating. I love all the kind of things I learn about the Talani Mas through reading Dead House Gate so far, or Gardens of the Moon. And I'm sure I'll learn a lot more in time. Tool sensed that although the source had been destroyed, something had been born within. He also sensed some of the attacks Hairlock was directing at Crone, and when Lorn disregarded the possibility of a threat, taught her a lesson about being too complacent. Like their fucking dynamic is so cool, right? Because she just like went to sleep and wakes up with like Tool has like his blade at her throat. Like she's not worried about magical attacks, because she's anti-magic. She's a bane to magic, which is fucking awesome. And she has her sword, and like she knows the ins and outs of how mages operate. So she's not worried, but I think it's deeper than that, right? And this is why I wanted to make this video, because I think there's a lot of deeper things involved in their dynamic that kind of like maybe is more subtext, so it's easier to miss. I think that she secretly is self-destructive, or at least is suicidal in a sense. Like there's no true reason to do what she did and just go to sleep and not and be careless about it. She's careless about her own life. She truly is. She rushes into battle, impulsivity coming from a character whose perspective chapters show her to be a rather methodical and calculated character. Right. And yet her actions betray that. And I think betray it deliberately, maybe unconsciously, but still like something in her is deliberately trying to put herself in fatal danger. And it succeeds by the end of the book. I think that secretly Gardens of the Moon is a book about Lorn trying desperately to get herself killed and succeeding. And in that, and in only that, can we look at Lorn's story as a success. Right? Her gambit failed. Well, maybe that was her goal. Like that's the point of these study videos, to kind of try to take a character and look at every different angle, or a scenario or an event, and try to look at it from a lot of different angles to try to see if we can find some more psychological truth to it. And I think that that's a fascinating one. I think that Tool understands this over time. Like he understands, oh, she's more dead inside than I am. She's more controlled than I am. She has less life than I do, and I am undead, right? These are all different things that makes their relationship so fascinating to me. Lorn voiced misgivings about their mission to free a Jaghut tyrant from his barrow, amongst them doubts as to how they might find the barrow. Tool told her that he would be able to locate it, as Talon and Amtos Felak were of the same flavor. He also explained more about why he was chosen for the mission, boiling down to him being thought expendable, and shared some of his knowledge of Anamander Rake with her. Yeah, I'm so happy we're doing this video, because like everything he's saying is basically what's happening with Lorn, to the point where they're almost mirrored in a way. She's also expendable. That's why she's here. She's expendable. Adjuncts are apparently expendable, without a great deal of value placed upon them by the Empire that they're so willing and determined to sacrifice everything for, especially their own souls. So it's these two kind of losers of Empire doing the hardest work for the Empire. That's how authority thanks its most fearless workers, its fearless soldiers, by treating them as if they were expendable. Huh? Wow. Once they had found the barrow, Toole squatted for a long time, seemingly unmoving, before the standing stone marked it. He eventually rejoined Lorn, and after binding a wound of hers, told her that it was time to open the tomb. He led her inside past the residue of numerous wards dispersed by Toole's Talon power. Seeing the wards of his people, Toole told Lorn that he thought he now knew the name of the tyrant, and that he shared her misgivings about freeing it, but, like her, was compelled to do so. Yeah, she had so many misgivings. Like, Toole kind of gave her a bit of a history lesson of the futility of empires, buried on top of empires, buried on top of empires, casualties buried on top of each other, the pointlessness of blood and carnage and conquest. And she cried. She broke down crying, and that's probably the best written part of the book, where Lorn is questioning whose tears they are, firstly, and then secondly, what she's actually crying for. Like, am I crying for the human condition, for the human, for the failed human narrative? Like, what exactly am I crying for? Am I crying, are these tears Lacine's, or are they Lorn's? Are these tears of the human spirit? But ultimately, it doesn't fucking matter, because the wind will dry all tears the same way. And many will cry. Many people better and worse than Lorn will cry. And the wind doesn't care. The earth doesn't care. Malazan doesn't care. He also informed her that once their task was completed, due to the residual power of the Jag Hut, he would be free of his vows. Exactly, yes. He would go in search of answers, and told her that she would be welcome to accompany him. Lorn, however, avoided giving a response to the offer. Once in the tomb, they located the Jag Hut's finesse, and Toole warned the adjunct not to hold on to it for too long. And I think that's one of the biggest tragedies of this book. What if Lorn said yes? But of course, what makes this book so powerful is that Lorn couldn't say yes. Her compulsion, her vow, like, she would never be free of her vows to the state. Like, her vows to the Empress were deeper than, like, the ancient vows to Emperor or to Empire that Toole's were. Like, her vows were deeper. Her brainwashing was deeper. Her conditioning was unbreakable, right? Like, she was more possessed by Empire than Toole was. Like, of course she couldn't agree. And I think there is that secret part of her that wanted to die. There's that part of her that did not want to do this anymore. So, like, either she was grooming Paran to replace her so she can get away entirely, or grooming Paran to replace her so that she could die and leave all this shit behind, right? Like, all the trauma of the Mouse Quarter riots, all of the trauma of the stuff that she did for the state. It's kind of just a beautiful tragedy, really, when we're looking at Lorn and looking at Toole. When they parted company outside, Toole told Lorn that he would observe the Jag Hut but would not interfere. However, should she change her mind and wish to come with him still, he would be in the area for another 10 days. Like, if she just left with him then, or buried the Finnest and then went back to Toole and didn't bother going after the coin bearer, we'd be dealing with a very different sort of extended Malazan narrative, wouldn't we? Right? But then again, Gardens of the Moon would be about 1,000% less tragic. I think she wanted to die. Because I think that, like, life, true living, was forbidden to her, prohibited by Empire and Empresses. I think that if you're a character in Malazan who is anti-magic, a bane to magic, and this might speak to my own philosophy and psychology maybe more so, but that's part of the fun of analyzing fiction. You get to kind of peer into yourself as you're analyzing these characters who you've grown so attached to. I think that, like her, I would love to be called a bane to magic, and I kind of roll my eyes at many magical themes and characters and systems, right? I kind of roll my eyes at magic as a theme. To me, life has little magic in it. I think to truly be described as a magical kind of character or a magical kind of individual independent from fantasy literature, you have to be more whimsical and more believing, more faithful in the process of the human condition and the human experience. Something that I don't think Lorn and I are. I think being a bane to magic kind of implies that you're a kind of fixed individual. And while fixed individuals, I think, could be like pretty intelligent and pretty interesting people, I think they're normally depressed, but it doesn't mean they're wrong. Maybe we are fixed. Maybe people don't change. People only change their context, but they can't change themselves. There's a lot of different things that we can think about, like that's kind of stemming from Lorn and Tool. Tool later appeared before the newborn Darujistan Azath house, protecting it alongside Captain Ganois Paran from the tyrant's now animated Finist. That was like such a wild fucking scene, man. My mind was exploding with that. The pair weakened the source of Wraith's power long enough for the house to imprison the Finist within its grounds. Yeah, that shit was wild. And then like Ralik goes inside there with Vorkan, right? The two assassins. We got to go back to them, right? I'm curious of what the fuck is in that house. Like, what are they doing now? Then Memories of Ice. Okay, so he does come back in Memories of Ice. I kind of knew that already in a way, but that's all we're going to read of his wiki because I don't want to get spoiled by anything. And I think we actually covered a lot right then and there, to be honest with you. Wow. I was just so blown away by Tool and Lorn in this book. I'm so blown away by this book in its totality. This is the third Malazan Gardens of the Moon video specifically that I've made. This is the third Gardens of the Moon video that I've made. And it's because every time I think I've closed the book on investigating Lorn, there's a whole new dimension that I need to explore. And this is just one character, and it's the character that I happen to relate to most. It's the character that most appealed to me. There are so many characters in here that do so many different compelling things. So I'm not the guy to study every single one, but the fact that I could like get this deep and do this much for one character speaks volumes of the power that this single book holds, right? Like, this is the book I think that I'm going to obsess over the most within Malazan. And I know that's kind of maybe premature of me to say, considering I've only read this one and I'm only about 200 pages into Deadhouse Gates right now. But this really feels special, right? Like, I could love every book, but I don't think I'll love every book as much as this one. This one's so special. And yeah, for me, it's mostly because of Lorn, but Lorn feels like a character tailor-made to my taste, right? Like, I don't think I'll get another character that kind of like fills every requirement to be one of my all-time crushes and all-time muses as characters. So like Lorn has made this book possibly the finest experience I've had with fantasy literature, possibly, and I'm extraordinarily grateful for that. Love you, Lorn. Love you, Tool. I love Tool. The Tool also really affected me. I love Tool. I love Lorn. I love Gardens of the Moon. What a masterpiece. What a masterpiece. Thank you for watching my third video study of Gardens of the Moon. It really means a lot. And I can't wait to continue this Malazan journey. Thank you so much.